we started the reviews off with the very first tape ever released, and while it went rather smoothly, I just want to quickly apologize for not being present for the premiere. I was dealing with some bad weather that kinda had me on edge. But enough about that. Let's begin our review of Spills and Chills. Spills and Chills and Other Thomas Thrills was first released on VHS on February 29th, 2000 by Anchor Bay Entertainment. Well, anyone knows that if you end up with this specific print, you get this familiar trailer at the beginning.
This summer, take a magical trip to a world unlike any other. An enchanting place where adventure is only a whistle away. Destination Films presents Alec Baldwin, Peter Fonda, Mara Wilson, and Thomas.
Little engines can do big things.
Things are gonna change around here, Puffball. Thomas and the Magic Railroad. Rolling into theatres everywhere, July 2000.
Mind you, not every sticker labeled blue tape has this trailer. That could be that the alternate blue tape with the 99 styled logo might be the earliest print before that said later print that had the Magic Railroad trailer when it was getting ready to be shown in theaters. The same sticker label is used on a black tape, but it is currently unknown if the tape has the trailer. My guess is probably not. Like some of the other VHS tapes, there was a point in time where this one came with an URL, but I'm not exactly sure how common they were. Later black and blue ink labels of this tape were then released sometime between later 2000 and 2004. And again, this was yet another one of those that came with a bonus wooden railway train. Then on September 20th, 2002, it was re-released onto DVD. It took some time until this release came out on another one of those double feature DVDs, this time with New Friends for Thomas in 2009, distributed by Lionsgate. Then it was released again in 2015 by Universal. Angelus and Baldwin. That's quite the pair, don't you think? And also, unlike the VHS, this DVD comes with extra bonus features, including 2 songs. One of them is kept the same, Every Cloud Has a Silver Lining, but Night Train is included as a bonus song only on the DVD. And it's interesting that both music videos don't have the on-screen lyrics. That's because they were reused from this and the Cranky Bugs VHS. To be perfectly honest though, I much prefer the music videos with no lyrics. Alright, so that pretty much sums up the history. Time to dive into the episodes. So Spills and Chills features 6 episodes, all narrated by Alec Baldwin. They are Toby's Discovery, Rusty and the Boulder, Duncan Gets Spooked, Stepney Gets Lost, Haunted Henry, and Sir Topham Hatt's Holiday. So let's start with our first one, Toby's Discovery. STH takes his grandchildren to the seaside and is very intrigued by their sandcastle. They tell him there is one like it on the island, and they go exploring. They find the castle and an old mine, which Topham plans to restore. But Toby believes the old mine is haunted when he hears a strange noise while on guard. Is it a ghost, or is it something else? Okay, well, first off, the episode isn't super exciting. It's just, oh, Topham found 2 places to fix up. Yippee. I know some people have said that Toby's character started downgrading around Season 5. But my question is, where exactly? If you really think it's because he was scared of being in the old mine, I don't really see that as a downgrade. In fact, I find that pretty relatable. If you were in Toby's place, wouldn't you kind of feel the same if you were in a potentially haunted area? I can tell you now, I would. Okay, now we have to talk about Bertram. Yes, he's one of the pointless characters introduced this season. Now, people only hate this episode because of him. Listen, one under-a-minute pointless character does not ruin an episode completely. At least to me. What saves this episode for me is exactly what the tape was pushing for. The chills factor falls right under this spooky-themed episode, and I adore that. The music score is just phenomenal.
Night came. Toby looked anxiously around. Everything seemed rather spooky. Quite suddenly, he heard a strange wheezing sound. "It's the ghost!" he wailed. "What ghost?" his driver asked. "It's the old warrior. He's come to hunt me down."
Again, it's not exactly an amazing story, but it is still pretty enjoyable for what it is. 9 out of 10. We now move on to our second episode, Rusty and the Boulder. Workmen are in process of building a new quarry in the mountains that's guarded by a very large boulder. Rusty is very nervous about it until one day, Boulder rolls off the mountain, wreaking havoc in its path. I've said this so many times now, but I'll say it again. This was one of the Season 5 episodes that terrified the hell out of me when I was a kid. I know it may sound kinda silly, and honestly, when I look back, maybe it was because the boulder was so big compared to the engines that maybe I was scared they'd be crushed? I really can't say for certain.
Better a smash than a squash.
But I do know as the years passed, God was I missing out. By the time I was a teenager, that's when I realized how great of an episode it really is. I mean, sure, it might look unrealistic in some parts, and I'm just gonna say this. I really don't like the big face on Rusty. Those models just look so weirdly obscure. I much prefer the smaller face on Rusty. Looks a hell of a lot better, and more natural looking. Also, what up with the Gordon face on Boulder? I still for the life of me can't figure that part out. Is it alive, or... I don't know. Oh yeah, and then there's Thumper. Another very pointless character. Why the hell do you even exist?
Money!
Anyways, I think the music also played a part in why this episode freaked me out. I guess it was due to how unsettling everything sounded, leading up to those adrenaline moments.
"Don't be so daft. It can't," said the driver. "But it could." "It's rolling along our line."
Now I've grown to love it, hence why this is one of my personal favorite Season 5 stories. I may have my nitpicks with it, but I don't let them stop me from enjoying the episode. I would go as far as to say that this is one of the most intense Thomas episodes they ever made. What a freaking adrenaline rush. 9 out of 10. On to our third episode, Duncan Gets Spooked. Peter Sam has an accident with some cars and is forced to work in the yard. Duncan teases him until Rusty tells him a story about a ghost engine, which Duncan thinks is all nonsense. So they play a trick on him, where Duncan receives his own little spook. Now, in a way, this does sound like your typical don't believe in ghosts, trick played on kind of story, which doesn't really sound all that amusing, but I can kind of give this one a pass given how creepy it is. It's not the story itself that brings it up, it's the amazing music score. Mike and Junior really outdid themselves here. I mean, just take a listen.
Then, ahead, he saw flickering lights. His driver knew they were only insects that shine brightly at night, but to Duncan they looked like an engine.
You see what I mean? Pulling back for just a sec, there's also something really intriguing I find about Rusty's ghost story. Whether it's real or made up, it's a tad dark, I would say. I mean, the engine kinda died, so yeah. Also, I love how they used Skarloey's model for the little engine. No wonder he's afraid of bridges. Like I said, it may sound like a bit typical for a story, but looking past that, the chills definitely kicked in with this one. Between the visuals and the music, it really is a great episode. 10 out of 10. Now for the fourth episode, Stepney Gets Lost. Stepney goes to work with Mavis and Toby at the quarry and is then asked if they would like to pull a special train later that evening. While not heeding Topham's warning about being home before dark, Stepney delivers the train but gets lost in the fog, where he then arrives at the scrap yards, merely avoiding being scrapped himself. This episode for sure took a much darker approach. Stepney is once again in a life and death situation. How I look at this episode could be like this. Stepney is about to be executed, and the Diesels are pretty much his executioners. They bring him to the smelting shed, where they then leave him to... Yeah, that may sound a bit too dark, but you get what I mean, right? Also, tell me I'm not the only one who, as a kid, I thought the grabber looked like a freaking spider. It does have a pretty striking resemblance, does it not? Anyways, the other thing I liked about this was Alex Stepney voice. Next to his Bill and Ben voices, this voice just suits Stepney.
What are those strange sounds? Wondered Stepney. Then the fog slowly lifted. Oh no! We're in the scrapyards!
Now, I do also have a soft spot for Alex Diesel voices, but after I listened to both dubs, I don't know, Angelus's just sounds more sinister in comparison. Take a listen and tell me what you think.
Got ya this time, Stepney. You'll make very fine scrap indeed. Buffer him, Bert.
Got you this time, Stepney. You'll make very fine scrap indeed. Buffer 'em, Bert.
But yeah, if it wasn't clear enough already, I love this episode so much. The visuals, music, voice acting, everything is great. Stepney gets to live another day with a 10 out of 10 for this episode.
Blue bells forever.
Now we are on our fifth episode, Haunted Henry. Unbeknownst to Henry, the viaduct isn't safe and thinks there is a ghost when he sees lights moving inside the station. They repair the viaduct and proceed to deliver the goods later in the night, but the gates and signals show danger, which spooks the cars and Henry. Is there a ghost, or is someone trying to warn them of actual danger? Well, first off, this is yet another amazing Henry story. The spooky atmosphere of this entire episode, between the visuals and music, are unbelievably creepy.
What's that? Cried Henry. Then they saw a light move within the station building. Ghosts! Exclaimed Henry.
And this is another case where I do like Baldwin's acting as Old Bailey. I just love how compared to Angelus's voice, he made him sound like a crazy old hermit, which I think is pretty funny.
I tried to warn you about that viaduct. Why didn't you pay attention? I'd like to operate that old station again, if you let me. I promise I won't spook Henry.
Well, I tried to warn you about the viaduct. Why didn't you pay attention? I'd like to operate that old station. If you let me, I promise I won't spook Henry again.
The one question I do have with Old Bailey is, how long exactly was he at that station? I'm a little confused here because it does seem like he could be homeless. Again, I don't know how to explain that. Now, this last part could just be me, but the station, I don't know. Where it's placed didn't exactly sit well with me. What I mean by that is, it just looks like it's in the middle of nowhere. So that binds the question, how often are engines going to come here? But regardless of this one nitpick, it's still a pretty lit story. They really outdid themselves with this one. 10 out of 10. And now we come to the final episode, Sir Topham Hatt's Holiday. The Topham family break away from the railway for a while, but their holiday doesn't seem to have any good turns. 1 minute, Lady Hat complains about Annie and Clarabelle looking too old.
Those coaches are old and uncomfortable. Why don't you use them as beach huts instead?
Next, they're dodging a reckless pilot.
What the fuck was that?
And then they get stuck in the mud on their riverboat.
Oh, botheration. We're stuck.
Yeah, it's no surprise that I'm not exactly the biggest fan of this one. I don't know, this episode never really stuck out to me. It was just kind of there. Nothing really too major happens in this one either. It's pretty much a laid-back holiday story, which I suppose is fine, but I can do well without it personally. That's not to say that I 100% hate this episode, because I don't. I just find it a little boring. However, there are some things that I can say I do like. For one, Baldwin's narration in certain scenes do make me laugh quite a bit. We do get to see some really nice aerial shots to kind of give us a new perspective on what Harold sees, and the music in some parts are pretty nice to listen to, so it's not entirely bad. It does have its good points. I can even get a small chuckle out of this.
My! Exclaimed Lady Hat. What splendid coaches! So much more suitable than those old beach huts on wheels. No one said a word.
So I'll be fair here and say that even though I'm not the biggest fan of this, I can at least rate this episode a 7 out of 10. And that brings us to the, wait a minute. We forget, there is a bonus music video at the end. Every cloud has a silver lining. I'm gonna keep this short and simple and say that I think this is one of the many great songs from the franchise. I really love the overall meaning behind it. Basically saying that we all may have our ups and downs, but there's always that one silver lining that will pick us up again. And it's also interesting to see how this music video only featured Season 1, 2, 3, and 5 footage, but no Season 4. Wonder why they left those out. Oh well. So what do I think of Spills and Chills as a whole? I think it's a pretty excellent release. It definitely stayed true to its title. We had our spills with an intensified episode, and definitely some chills with the remaining spooky-themed episodes. I can't really say the same for Holiday, cause it could just be me, but I don't see either of those elements in this episode. Like I said, it's pretty much a laid-back kind of story, which isn't a bad thing, mind you. And I do think the music video at the end was a nice touch to wrap the tape up. I find it a bit ironic that in each story, the way I view it, the characters all had their bad moments, but there was a silver lining to whatever happened afterwards. That's a bit freaky when you think about it, but it does make some kind of sense. But yeah, regardless how I feel about one episode, the tape is still really good. I'd say this is Season 5's best release. And that wraps up this review. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see you all next time when we review one of my favorite Season 3 tapes. See you guys next time!